Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, find out what major infrastructure software uses the admin password of 100. I'm not kidding. Plus, future improvements to SSL and how the CIA keeps their IT admins trustworthy. Then after all of that, it's an epic IT war story. All that and more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is Jupiter Broadcasting System Network and Administration Podcast. This is episode 37, and we streamed it live on Thursday, December 22nd, for release on December 23rd, 2011. Ho, ho, ho! This episode is brought to you by GoDaddy, and I'll tell you more about them as the episode goes on. And this live stream is provided by ScaleEngine.com, which is awesome! My name is Chris, and joining me every single week is the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan!
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Man. Welcome back to TechSNAP. Now, I'll be honest, full disclosure with everyone up front, I'm sick. So if you hear a little coughing in the background, I will do my best to cough off mic. But my mute button is on the other side of the room, unfortunately. Bad planning on my part. See, I just thought I was superhuman and would never get sick and would not need a mute button right here. Because why would I ever want to censor myself? I have such amazing things to say. Right? Mm-hmm. All right, so we got a really big show coming up, and so it seems to be with the security news and the angle we take. There's not much of a slowdown like there is for a lot of the other shows this time of the year. So TechSNAP's going to keep on snapping. We'll be here this week and next week. However, if you are a live stream viewer, TechSNAP will be one day earlier on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv. Because you've got like some big fancy concert you're going to or something.
Yes, Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Yeah, so that'll be really cool. So we opted not to take the week off, but we did have to just kind of
shuffle
bump
things around
the day a little bit. Now, Alan, is there anything else you want to cover before we jump into our first story? For the week?
No, we have a huge show today, so we should get going.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so this one's massive because it's about Siemens and lying about critical flaws in their core systems and control and data software that many enterprises use. So tell me what's going on with this.
Okay, so Siemens has this SCADA system that they call SCADA. And this is the control system used in all kinds of water treatment plants and power plants. And it was actually also the control system used by the Iranians that the TechSNAP virus targeted.
Right. And they utilized some of those zero-day flaws in the Siemens system to make TechSNAP work, right?
TechSNAP mostly use zero-day flaws in Windows to get into the computers. And so SCADA system has a major flaw in its authentication system that basically allows an attacker to completely bypass authentication and gain access to the control software without even having to have a username or password.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wow. So it just makes the username and password whole system just not even needed.
Yeah. But also, their password system is so weak that it's like, I don't need to go through the effort of going around it, because the default password on the system when you install it is 100. Just 100.
Oh my gosh.
At least if they wrote out the words 100, the password would be longer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, here it is right here in the article. Yeah. Just 100.
But also, if you change your password in the system and you happen to use a special character in the password, because the system doesn't use hashing, I'm guessing, I don't even know if it stores the password in plain text or how it stores it. But if you use a special character, the system won't accept that and will reset the password back to 100.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So you thought you changed the password, but you didn't.
So it has a default behavior so that when it doesn't, something the user does, it doesn't agree with, it just defaults to 100.
Yeah.
So have we kind of set up how critical this software is? Because this is like, this is like the how do you explain this? Like it's like the glue that holds entire massive corporations together to handle like everything from manufacturing operations to building and shipping and all kinds of things.
Any kind of automation, so like controlling valves and pumps in a water treatment plant or an oil refinery.
Yeah. Or just UPS's tracks in their building to move boxes.
Yep, or anything like that. And it's used or in power plants to dictate, how much steam to feed through the generators and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And it also a lot of times if they have automated systems, say like you have a power outage somewhere, like a transformer blows and the network reroutes around that, A lot of times that has to happen too fast for a human to actually do it, and software like this will manage those kinds of operations.
Right. And so if you can control those, you can create a power failure. And, cause a cascading one like the one back, if everybody remembers, the one in 2003, the big blackout in North America, wiped out giant parts of the East Coast.
Well, I think everybody remembers Die Hard 1, where the FBI comes in and cuts the power to the whole block, thus lowering the magnetic force field around the vault so they can get their $650 million.
Right.
All right. That was a shameless plug. I'm releasing Film Filter. It's a new test show on Saturday. I think. Yeah, I think I'll put it out on Saturday or Tuesday this week. So look for that over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. We review Die Hard.
Yes. Well, Die Hard is a great Christmas movie.
Exactly.
It was the top of our list when we do our Christmas movie club, too.
Exactly. And it was funny rewatching it, how much Christmas holiday stuff there is in there. But I don't mean to make light of this very serious situation that Siemens is in.
So the Siemens system was the target of the Stuxnet attack, which was the most sophisticated worm/virus that's ever been seen. Yet the Siemens system seems rather trivial to break into.
Yeah, that's true. It is funny, all this talk about Stuxnet, and then the password's 100. You can just log in. It's just 100. It's the default. We just set it to that, so you don't need any fancy Trojan. Maybe Stuxnet wasn't such a badass, is what you're thinking, right?
Well, it was, but
it's
it wasn't required.
Well, some of the greatest break-ins that I've had when I've been doing contract, white hacking, have been the really simple FTP passwords where like the password is just password.
Right, but so they went through all these zero-day exploits to get into the machine, and then found out that they could have just telnetted in. Or something to that effect.
Yeah, that is pretty great.
Yeah. So the main interface to the Siemens system is a web interface. So it uses cookies to authenticate you, right? But the session cookies aren't random. So the values that the session cookies use can be predicted after some analysis of login attempts and so on. So that would allow an attacker to predict what the next cookie would be and to just basically gain authentication without having to know the username or password.
Ah, gotcha.
To just generate their own cookie that will be an acceptable authentication token.
Yeah.
So the researcher, Bill Rios, who works at Google, discovered this issue back in May and reported it to Siemens. And Siemens privately to him acknowledged the issue that, they have to fix this, right? But later, Siemens' PR department, when asked by Reuters about the issue, said, quote, "There are no open issues regarding authentication bypass bugs at Siemens," end quote.
So they started denying it.
Yeah, so to the researcher, their internal people are like, yeah, this is a huge flaw, and, they don't even have an excuse for it. I don't know how anybody builds anything like this. It's just
especially for such a critical infrastructure piece of software.
It's like, if you saw a Cisco router or something with an interface this bad, you would, no one will buy them ever again. I
mean, I've never really been for this idea, but it almost seems like if you had software that you could classify as a certain infrastructure grade software.
Yeah.
That, dude, the money that these people charge for this software, it should be classified as that.
It looks like it was written by someone who is still in school.
And then I would like to see, once something's stamped enterprise grade or industrial infrastructure grade, then you can be sued when you screw up like this. I think there should be some sort of legal action that be taken against Siemens to get their butt in gear. I hate it when people sue, but you just got to be able to do something.
The issue with that is if you require some kind of certification that the application is enterprise worthy,
right,
then it stops the smaller vendors from being able to compete because they can't afford to spend $250,000 on having their app certified.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you end up having a crappy certified app instead of a better app from a smaller company. So,
well, yeah, I mean, on the plus side, when the password's 100, super easy for the guys to administer. So tech support is a breeze. So that's positive.
Yeah. The other problem with the Simatic system is that there are three interfaces. There's a web interface, a VNC interface, and a telnet interface.
Okay.
First problem, why are they offering telnet instead of SSH?
Right.
Anybody can listen to anything going on. It's a bad idea.
Are these things like ancient or what?
I don't know. Oh, yeah. Also, the VNC is probably just regular VNC, which has a limit of 8 characters on the password.
Right. Yeah.
Should be VNC over SSL instead.
Right. Oh, but I'm sure if they don't, I'm sure if they're using Telnet,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? If they're using Telnet.
But the worst part is all 3 of those interfaces use separate credentials, all having a default of 100. So if being logical, you log into the web interface and change the password, you don't realize that the VNC and Telnet passwords are still 100. It's like, I changed the password. It's like you changed the web password, but the Telnet password is still 100, and anyone can just log in to
this stuff. It could be is because I've seen some old Siemens stuff years ago, and the problem is just a lot of it. Even if Siemens isn't doing this anymore, all this old gear is still in operation. These people want to get the most out of their capital investment they can. I mean, they keep it running, and this is a serious problem.
Right. Well, because they probably spent millions of dollars on software that was written by a 3-year-old.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I agree with you. Anything else on that?
ThreatPost has some really good coverage of some more of the nitty-gritty stuff on here.
Yeah, they really...
So I linked that at the bottom of the show notes.
The ThreatPost write-up has a lot of good quotes from the guy that was claiming...
From the researcher,
Yeah. So that's great. You get some stuff directly from him. So yeah, links to all this stuff in the show notes, guys. If you're ever wondering stuff we talk about, copious amounts of details and links are provided there. So, and the show notes, I guess people have actually asked me, Chris, where are the show notes? And I kind of always just refer to the show notes as the show notes. If you go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, every post of TechSNAP, if you click on that post, you see the video, you scroll down, there's download links for like every format you could want, RSS feeds to subscribe, and then boom, show notes. So that's
so if you on the front page of Jupiter Broadcasting, just click TechSNAP. It'll give you a list of episodes. Click the episode. There's the video, the downloads, and the show notes.
And the links. Yeah. All right.
And
so
the show notes are all full of linky goodness.
Do you want to jump on to the next one or anything else on this one?
The next one is cool as well. Or not cool.
Not so cool. No. So we've been following the topic of the hard drive shortage. I think people are probably pretty familiar. There's the floods in Thailand, which caused a lot of hard drive manufacturing to stop or slow down. And so now the hardware manufacturers are having to make some cutbacks, aren't they, Alan?
Yeah. Now, some of those companies said specifically that this had nothing to do with the flooding, and some of them didn't really say.
Yeah.
But basically, pretty much across the board, warranties on hard drives are getting shorter. Yeah. Now, part of that is, with a shortage, they want to unlock, they set aside so many hard drives to be used as replacements for warranties. So if they shorten the warranties, then they can retain less of that stock. And especially when they're starting to deal with having, with drives getting bigger fast, you don't want to be having to hold on to a bunch of smaller drives to replace warranty drives.
Right.
Because maybe not so much with consumer ones, but with the enterprise ones, they have to be the exact model that you get a replacement with.
Yeah.
They can't give you that free upgrade because it screws with your RAID array.
Right. As consumers, we're like, yeah, get the new version. That's awesome.
It's like, they're fine with getting a hard drive twice the size of what they originally got.
Yeah.
But the enterprise, they want the exact same drive, the same revision if possible, like every detail. And so Western Digital and Seagate have announced that all drives sold in 2012 and on will have shorter warranties. If you bought the drive already, then they're not going to retroactively take away your warranty or anything. And if your store already bought the drive from Seagate or Western Digital, then that warranty may still be good.
Okay.
But that stock is going to disappear pretty quick. And
so once it's gone, you're out.
Yeah, then you're stuck with a new warranty. Now, this has been covered in a couple places around the internet, but they didn't have as much detail as I managed to find. I managed to actually find someone who found out about this about a week before the news did, and he had specific details about which models of drives are getting which warranties.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, the hard drives usually come in series and they have different ones.
Yeah.
And so I have the details for us. So for Western Digital, the Caviar Green and Caviar Blue series, which are their eco-friendly and their regular desktop ones, but also the Savio and a couple of their other ones. But basically anything that says green or blue on it is going to have a 2-year warranty instead of the regular 3-year warranty.
Okay. Those are kind of cheap drives to begin with, so that's not such a blow.
They're the regular drives, basically. Then they have the Black Edition drives, which are their more enthusiast performance type drives. and the Velociraptors and all their enterprise stuff will keep their regular 5-year warranty.
Oh, okay.
So if you pay extra for the black edition of the drive, it'll have the 5-year warranty still. But the regular green and blue editions will drop from 3 years to 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it sucks, but that's not too bad actually. And really, I think the people who would be the most upset would be the Caviar Black consumers because they're that.
But the black is staying at 5 years, so they're
exactly.
okay.
Exactly.
Seagate desktop and laptop drives, such as the Barracuda, Barracuda Green, and the Momentus 2.5-inch drives.
The Momentus.
Yes. They're seeing their industry-leading 5-year warranty for a desktop drive, because the best you could get anywhere else was 3 years, is being cut down to 1 year.
Whoa, that sucks.
That does.
That sucks because that 2.5-inch drives, the failure rates are higher too on those. So that's a double blow.
Yeah. Seagate specialty video and surveillance type drives like the SV35 and the Pipeline HD and HD Mini will have 2-year warranties.
Ooh, I think those are also like the drives they put in DVRs too, like TiVos and stuff.
Yeah. That's but also especially network DVRs for security systems. That's the ones they usually use.
And what were they, 5 year before?
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Okay.
I think they were probably. I think everything Seagate did was 5 year.
Okay. Seagate. Yeah.
Seagate's higher end drives like the Barracuda XT, which is what I would, if I was buying a drive for my computer, that's what I would buy normally.
The Barracuda.
But also their Momentus XT, which are the hybrid drives.
Momentus.
That are part SSD and part regular drive.
Yeah.
And also the nearline drives like the Constellation, Constellation 2, Constellation ES, ES2, and so on. So like the drives I bought for my ZFS machine.
Yeah, okay.
They'll have a 3-year warranty instead of 5. Like, I bought mine already, so I get 5 years.
I mean, they're making some pretty big cuts here, really. If you think about it, you're going from 5, but...
Yeah, well, nobody else was offering 5 years, and so, like, we can...
still competitive.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we can use that money to, innovate
their operation.
Instead.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and also if it helps keep the hard drive prices down, that's good, too.
Yeah. So the Seagate enterprise drives, like the Cheetah series, which is 10,000 and 15,000 RPM drives, they will retain their 5-year warranty.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Also, if you didn't know, recently announced Seagate has purchased Samsung's hard drive business.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So all Samsung drives will now be under Seagate type warranties.
I think we tossed that rumor when it was a rumor in the roundup, and I don't think we covered it when it was officially announced. Yeah.
Right, and I think almost all the Samsung branded drives will just turn into Seagate branded drives. But I think they're going to keep a couple of the product lines alive for a little while anyway. And so they'll probably fall into the same warranty scheme. Regular desktop, laptop stuff is 1 year. The enthusiast and nearline stuff is 3 years, and enterprise stuff is 5 years.
Ah, okay. There you have it.
And also the part of that hard drive deal where Samsung sold their hard drive unit to Seagate is Seagate's Momentus XT and other SSD drives will use Samsung flash memory.
Oh, well, Samsung makes an awful lot of flash memory. That's one of their big businesses.
So basically it was kind of a strategic partnership where Seagate's going to take over the hard drive manufacturing stuff and get a good deal on all the flash they need. Boy,
that could be good. Maybe we'll start seeing prices go down because of that. Hopefully we'll see that. Any other thoughts on that one?
Seagate has some ridiculous, very large enterprise SSD drives that are like $2,000 a drive. So hopefully the price on those come down a little bit.
Yeah, seriously.
They look really nice, but I'm not spending that much money on a 256 gigabyte hard drive.
No way. All right, why don't we talk a little bit about some new standards coming to SSL certificates? This could be good, right?
Like the very first episode of TechSNAP was about the giant fail of SSL.
Right.
And so to top for the second to last episode of the year, we're going to talk about what the plan is to fix it.
Okay, good. Full circle.
Yeah. So the CA/B, which is the Certificate Authority/Browser Forum, has come up with a new standard that they're going to have adopted about how SSL is going to work from now on. Specifically, how the certificate, what the requirements are for the certificate authorities to maintain their trust levels set in the browsers.
Awesome, right?
Yes.
Because this was a big problem we had, because once we had a compromised root certificate that was trusted and it was in those browsers, what do you do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this basically builds on some of the the framework they set up for the EV-SSL certificates, the more expensive, more verified SSL certificates that turn the URL bar green. So it basically moves a lot of those requirements down to just regular certificates.
Okay.
So in an effort to solve the issue that's plagued SSL certificate authorities for a while now, they put this new set of requirements together. And the goal is to establish the new set of criteria that vendors will use to decide what CAs are trusted. And to make the CAs actually held to a standard.
Nice. Accountable?
Yeah, basically.
Awesome. That is good news.
So the forum is made up of a bunch of major CAs like Komodo, CyberTrust, Entrust, GeoTrust, GlobalSign, GoDaddy, Network Solutions, StartCom, Thought, and so on and so on. Although it was interesting that VeriSign wasn't on the list. I don't know if that actually means anything or not.
That seems like a big omission.
Yeah. I don't know if but Thought, GoDaddy, GlobalSign, StartCom is basically everybody else, so...
Okay.
And then the relying parties, which are the browser type people, that was Apple, Google, Microsoft, Mozilla, RIM for BlackBerry, KDE, and Opera.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. So you must feel pretty positive about this, right?
Yes. So the policy strictly spells out what the duties of the CA are, such as verifying that the user that requests the certificate actually has control and right to use the domain or IP address listed on the certificate.
Okay.
Now, if you remember with the Komodo compromise, that was the problem, was that somebody was able to request a certificate for google.com when they didn't own or control google.com.
Right.
And so this means that the CAs will be legally obligated under this contract to actually verify it and not issue a certificate where they haven't verified that.
Boy, this is I'm ready to give these guys a belly clap.
Yeah. The CAs must also take efforts to ensure that the information is correct and not misleading. Specifically, we saw with the advent of the internationalized domain names, it was actually possible for a little while to get a domain with the word PayPal with one or both of the A's replaced with a Cyrillic character that looked like an A but wasn't exactly an A. So that in your phishing email, it would be a link and
it would look right.
You check your URL bar and it says paypal.com. You just didn't notice that A has, a little circle over it or something, right?
Right.
And, somebody managed to buy an SSL certificate for that domain. And, that can be a big problem.
I mean, that would be, if you didn't notice that kind of thing and it says it's HTTPS and it's green in your browser, I mean, that's pretty much everything people know to look for.
Exactly. There's, you can't be faulted for falling for it at that point.
Right.
And so one of the other rules is that the CA has to verify everything they print on the certificate. Oh. So there's a bunch of optional fields.
What a concept.
And, there's a bunch of optional fields, and they have to leave those blank unless they have actually verified every bit of the information, except for the operating unit, or one field that nobody ever uses anyway.
Okay.
But for example, there's the ability to put the address in a standard certificate now, not just EV-SSL certificates, but they're not allowed to do that unless they've actually verified that address.
Oh, okay.
Right. So basically, it means when you look at a certificate and read it, every field you can know is actually accurate.
Well, like Green Potato Chip is saying in the chat room, though, this will drive up cost.
Well, no, because they can leave the address field off, and so then they don't have to verify it.
So whose onus is it to do the verification? I mean, would the certificate issuer?
Authority. Yes.
Yeah, so that's going to cost them more to do that kind of stuff.
Right, but most certificates don't have an address, the company's business address written on them.
Okay.
Right. Normally, only the EV-SSL certificates that cost more anyway, because of the extra verification, would have that.
So they already kind of built that cost into the product.
Right, but they're saying that you can't put an address on there unless you verify. So
gotcha.
Your standard, $20 certificate just won't have an address on it.
Right. Right.
The CAs also have to maintain a 24/7 accessible repository of status information about a certificate. So rather than just a regular published revocation list that gets updated once a week or once a month, they have to actually do the OCSP or whatever it's called, where they have a web service that your browser can ping and make sure that the certificate hasn't been revoked yet.
Right,
so that browsers can actually check
to make sure it's still valid.
Right, because the problem we had with the, I think it was the DigiNotar one, was that they couldn't revoke the certificates because their revocation thing didn't work properly or wasn't specified on the certificate or something. Right. And so that meant that they had to untrust the entire certificate authority because they couldn't revoke the invalid certificates. So this is a requirement that they have to have a new, modern, 24/7 accessible status information.
That'll make it a lot more of a cleaner operation, so they can just pull one certificate. Yeah,
exactly, and so they won't have to issue patches for browsers and stuff to solve these ever again.
Right.
Certificates can no longer be issued for internal IP addresses. So you used to be able to buy a certificate for your like 192.168.
Oh yeah.
Because businesses would have these.
I completely forgot about that. I mean, I laughed because, oh my God, I mean, seriously, no kidding, right?
But yeah, it's like, well, if your Exchange server is protected by an SSL certificate that has 192.168 on it, then what stops me from buying a certificate and spoofing it? It defeats the point of a certificate.
Exactly.
Now, of course, this one is like a slow fade in or stage in type thing. So no new certificates with internal IPs can be issued after November 1st, 2015. And all existing certificates, even if they're still valid, have to be revoked by October 1st, 2016. So it's kind of giving people time to change.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2016 is kind of out there, but...
Right, but the idea is that when your current certificate expires, your new one won't be able to have it, so you'll have to change then.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. Also, the common name field, which is normally where you put the website name, is deprecated in favor of the subject alt names field. For quite a while, most certificate authorities, originally you had to specify whether you wanted like www.yourdomain.com or without the www, because if it didn't match exactly, you get a certificate error.
Yeah.
Recently, most authorities have been doing the subject alt name to give you both the root domain and the www version. And so that's becoming the standard, and they just want to deprecate using the common name field. And instead, they'll have one or more subject alt names and possibly with wildcards. Another rule is that certificates cannot have an expiration date more than 60 months.
Oh, interesting.
So you can't buy a certificate for more than 5 years.
That's probably for the best.
Yes. Beyond 2015, in order to get a certificate that's more than 39 months or just over 3 years, you have to have like special documentation about why you need that. So unless it's being like embedded in a device that's going to be really hard to update in the future because it's not actually going to be online or something.
Right. That could I could see that. But that's definitely a one-off. I mean, that's pretty rare, right?
Right. So most people, you won't be able to buy a certificate for more than 3 years at a time.
Okay.
And that's a good thing because we want to avoid having to revoke certificate all the time and just have them be changing.
Seriously.
Also, it means in the future, they won't have to put these dates so far out in the future, right? They can say...
they won't have to be 2016 next time.
Right. Next time you renew, then the new rule is this.
Right.
And that way, so, having certificates refresh every 3 years is probably a good thing.
Right, absolutely.
And it's not all that much overhead to replace a certificate anyway, especially if you're using them properly.
Yeah.
And I also linked to the PDF that talks about all the requirements because there's quite a list of them.
That would probably be riveting holiday reading for folks out there. So,
yes.
If
you're like me, it is. But
yeah, I was going to say, it actually might be for some of the folks in our audience. Anything else on that story before we move on?
No, it's just nice to see that certificates are finally going to start behaving a little better.
Absolutely great news. That gets the TechSNAP. We'll call it the TechSNAP wrist clap. I'll call it that. There you go. All right. Well, let's move on. We got a story here that we thought might quite seriously be semi-fun holiday reading. There's a story that ran a little bit ago, and Slashdot pointed us in its direction, and it's how the CIA keeps its IT staff honest. And have you ever kind of thought what it must be like to be a systems administrator for the CIA? That's got to be awful, right?
Well, I thought about it a bit when I looked at actually applying for a job at the Department of Defense in Canada.
Ah, yeah.
Or it's called the Department of National Defense, so it's DND instead of the DOD, which is the American one.
Do they give you like standard company horses to ride and stuff like that?
No, it's not the RCMP.
Oh, okay, all right.
The RCMP is our version of the FBI.
I thought horses was just like a thing that you guys did. I didn't realize it was specific to just one group. I apologize. Yeah. I thought maybe you guys were thrifty. I don't know.
The RCMP on horses is like American like state troopers in those sunglasses and the hat. It's actually the same hat.
Well, except for the hats don't poop and require food, dude.
Right.
All right. So
better for controlling a crowd of protesters than some horses.
Okay. So you want any thoughts on this story?
Yeah. So it just talks about a little bit of what the process is. So some of the is that people that actually have access to a lot of the more sensitive stuff have to get like polygraphed on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Now, even though polygraphing isn't great, it gives them something to look at.
Yeah.
And just the fact that they interview you on a regular basis kind of keeps people from doing silly things.
I mean, at least you just know they're always watching, right? I mean, I would always be on my best behavior because of that.
Because they also do reinvestigations where they look at your financials, and it's like if you're getting money that you shouldn't be getting from somewhere.
Oh boy.
It's like you have a house that's much more than you can afford. How did you do that?
The Slashdot comments too on this article are pretty good because they mention how there's this huge paranoia about outside agencies from outside the U.S. getting into their network. Right? They're really paranoid about that. But one of the things I noticed in that article was he mentions, and I don't mean to jump the gun here, but I just thought these two things didn't quite go together. He mentions that the CIA computers are not directly connected to the internet. They go through like some sort of central interagency network first.
Yes. So yeah, there's like an intelligence clearing network, and it's like basically a private network that all the agencies are on. And I don't know if that's actually over a VPN or whatever, but the best way to keep your stuff secure from the internet is physically isolating it.
But then at the same time, they're worried about outside agencies from the internet getting in.
I imagine it's because some machines are probably on both networks at some point.
Oh.
Or just, you get the island hopping effect, right? If there's a machine here that does have access, and so, someone gets information from the private network and then takes it back to their computer to work on it, and that computer has some malware or whatever, then it could get out.
Yeah, totally.
But, their job is to worry about things like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing, too. So
it's like, even if they can't get into the sensitive stuff, there's lower grade stuff, and it's just, they're just, the biggest target, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, the IT administrators are on some of the front lines of the digital stuff there, so it's got to be stressful. So it's an interesting read, and link in the show notes for that. Anything else on that one?
No, it's just, if you want to read about it, you can. If not, then don't.
Well, then go screw yourselves, people. We linked to that for you. Actually, this would be a good moment while I'm yelling at the audience to stop and tell them all about the good-looking folks over at GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy.com, the world's number one domain name registrar. Yeah, they are our Santa Claus this year, that's for sure. Absolutely. GoDaddy made 2011 possible. Basically, if it wasn't for GoDaddy, 2011 would have been a really bad year for Jupiter Broadcasting. And we actually have a great holiday gift. If you're ready for this, if you want to really spice up, maybe put something really special under the Christmas tree this year, and I do mean special, GoDaddy is going to give you 20% off XXX domain names. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
If you want to get yourself a .xxx domain name, perhaps you'd like to create an adult entertainment website, or maybe you're here to keep your brand from being registered as a .xxx. Actually, that I might want to get JupiterBroadcasting.xxx because of that. Now that I kind of think about it,
or also as a reserve it as your fallback plan.
My fallback plan if this podcast thing never works out. So you can go over to GoDaddy and get that. Just use our code. Get ready for this. I love this code. TechSNAPX. All one word, TechSNAPX, when you check out to get 20% off your XXX domain. Isn't that great? We've also got TechSNAP 10, which will get you 10% off any order. TechSNAP 20 gets you 20% off shared hosting, and Alan's favorite, TechSNAP 7, gets you a domain name for $7.49.
That's the best deal anywhere.
Yeah, you got it. And thanks to GoDaddy for bringing a ho-ho-ho Merry Christmas to TechSNAP. All right, Alan, with all that out of the way, let's get into the TechSNAP feedback. And it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com. The first one, Alan, are you ready? Are you ready,
yes,
sir? All right, the first one comes from Marcus. spelt with a K, so don't screw it up. Marcus writes, I have a small company network, about 5 clients, 1 Windows, 4 Linux. Your war story about Bacula was very interesting. I'm interested in building a dedicated Bacula server for my backups. Do you know any entry-level bare-bones systems to support the latest FreeBSD and can handle 3 drives? He wants to use ZFS. Can I just grab an Intel Atom bare-bones, and is it going to work? What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, an Intel Atom barebones should work. I looked at on Newegg around a little bit. They have a bunch of super micro barebones, like actual rack mountable servers.
Yeah.
But they only have space for 1 fixed hard drive. But then I remembered that Chris built a Bitcoin machine with a little Atom board.
I did, yeah. You know, I think I talked about it. It wasn't, I can't remember if it was episode 9 or if it was a little bit after that, but it was somewhere around in our Bitcoin days. And, you know, it was it's only $110 on Newegg now. And this thing is a 1.66 gigahertz dual core motherboard and Atom chip combo. It doesn't even have a CPU cooler on it. It's so low power. And it's a pretty nice board. I ran it a lot when I was Bitcoin mining all the time. The thing I like about this one, too, it has a PCI Express slot in it. So it's a really good thing. But Alan, what do you think about this thing? Most of these boards only have 1 stick for RAM. And so you're probably at best going to put 4 gigs in there, I would think.
Yeah, and I don't think they support more than that anyway.
Do you think with ZFS requirements, do you think this is enough processor horsepower and RAM for some of the more
processor's probably fine, but the RAM might be an issue.
Yeah? That's what I was wondering.
ZFS really recommends 64-bit rather than 32. Is the Atom chip, does it actually do 64-bit? I don't actually know.
I don't know either, you know, because I just bought it for my Bitcoin purposes. I just put 1 gig of RAM on it. I just I don't need RAM for Bitcoin.
Right.
Let me see if they say here on the specs page.
But yeah, if it's not 64-bit,
it does say maximum memory is 4 gigs on the specs page.
So
now
you don't really need ZFS there. Like, I'm not sure what you want to do that you need ZFS. But if you can avoid ZFS, then it's fine. You like 2 gigs of RAM, 32-bit FreeBSD on an Atom will work beautifully for a Bacula machine.
So
if you want to do ZFS, you need at least the 4 gigs of RAM.
Project Morris is saying the Atom 330 chip supports 64-bit instructions. So I wonder if you could get a motherboard that supports the Atom 330 chip, and then maybe you could use more than 4 gigs of RAM, and you could go 64-bit.
Yeah, but again, just ZFS needs lots of RAM, and your Bacula box doesn't.
Yeah.
So
totally.
ZFS might not make sense in that case. It'll probably work, but maybe it wouldn't.
No, see on this one also takes the Atom 330 processor which has a 64-bit instructions, and it still only has a max of 4 gigs of RAM.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, you could do it with an Atom, but I would avoid ZFS if you are going to go with the Atom and only a little bit of RAM. The other thing is Atoms have slower RAM. They only support 533 or something like that rather than higher end stuff.
Oh, it looks like the Atom 230 also supports the 64-bit extensions because user in the chat room is running FreeBSD right now, 64-bit on it. Okay. So there you go.
But you have to check the specs for the RAM speed. Usually the Atoms do a lot lower speed than a regular motherboard.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably not a big concern, but also Atom chips don't have nearly as much cache, and they don't do in-order queue depth and a bunch of stuff like that. But also they typically have weaker SATA controllers. But again, this is a backup server. You're not going to get all that much throughput anyway because you're doing it over LAN.
What about I kind of like what Crash Benedict's going with? What about like an Atom shuttle box or something? Or I mean an Athlon shuttle box, like a cheap piece listing here. An Athlon for $65.
Yeah, similar to the same CPU I used in the Bitcoin rig again because it was a super cheap CPU. So yeah, you could do it that way as well. The advantage to the Atom is obviously the super low power.
Yeah, I like the no fans, and I really like the low power. You're right about that.
But yeah, especially if you're really set, if your heart's set on ZFS, maybe going with something like a low end Athlon 2 processor with maybe 8 gigs of RAM, and it'll support faster RAM, and it will also do the
caching.
Right, but
forgetting the blanket on the name.
Yeah, I've completely lost my train of thought. I have no idea what I was going to say.
Well, that's all right. I think he's pretty set there. I think we covered most of the base.
You get the better SATA controller and stuff as well.
Do you have anything else on that one?
Not really.
Okay, because I'm excited. We have a war story that was sent in by A lot of you who watch Stoked know Irish because he's on that show and he's a member of our Jupiter Force fleet for the game Stowe. And
he is also the other Alan.
Yeah, his real name is Alan. And he sent in a war story that I'm going to let you read out since I have sick face today, but I love this. So I'll take it away, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So the story's kind of long. I'm going to skip a little bit of it, but it's in the show notes if you actually want to get the entire story because he wrote it out very, very nicely.
Yeah, it's a great read.
So he works for IBM and he's a team leader and things like that. And so he works in Ireland and he works at a site that deals with incidents and problems and change management and any kind of critical situation handling. And so the events described in this war story took place August 14th and 15th of 2003.
Okay.
So anyway, he works at the customer support center for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And it was the end of the summer, basically, right? The end of, or middle of August. And so their whole team went out to have a party. And, he was on call, though. So being an Irishman, he likes to drink, but he was on call, so he's like, I really shouldn't. But as he's at the party, he, happens to run into the duty manager, basically his direct boss, who's also on call, and who is probably drinking.
Yeah.
And, when he questions her about it, she's like, man, what's the worst that could happen? Well, right there, he should have known that they were cursed now. And he should have just turned around, left the bar, drove to the office, and wait for things to break down, because that's what happens when people say, what's the worst that could happen? He really should have known that. So he should have just stopped there, drove to work, and waited for something to happen, because it was going to. But he didn't, so he had a couple of drinks.
What's the worst that could happen, Alan?
Yes. So around 2 a.m., when he's quite inebriated, he has his girlfriend drive him home.
Good
and gets home around 2:30 and goes to sleep.
And he probably went to sleep.
Yeah, like he says, like his face touched the pillow, and 10 seconds before that, he was asleep. So then he wakes up about an hour later to what he describes as the wonderful melody of his on-call mobile phone.
Oh, boy.
Upon eventually figuring out how to answer the phone and hold it the right way up, he was greeted by an overly enthusiastic support agent from the States. Apparently, some guy from the States is calling into the customer support center in Ireland and wants their executive to join some important conference call that's happening in the middle of the night.
Oh, no.
Right. So he's like, well, I give my authority for you to call the duty manager. But he immediately realizes that his duty manager was drinking more than he was and probably just won't answer the phone. So while he's waiting for a call back saying that they couldn't reach the duty manager, he turns on the television and he sees the big news. U.S. power outage, 16 million homes on the East Coast without power. If everyone remembers, this is the giant East Coast blackout.
Yeah.
This war story reminded me of my own from that day that I will give next week.
Okay, cool.
So anyway, he realizes what the problem is. So when they call back and say, duty manager didn't answer the phone, he says, I think I know what's going on now. This is what we got to do.
Okay.
Because he realizes that basically IBM has their offices spread out and different responsibilities distributed, and there's a backup plan so that when one of these sites goes offline, there's a different site that takes over.
Yeah, they're a big company. They should be able to handle something like that.
So they realize that, Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, offline. IBM headquarters in New York, offline. MOB North in Toronto, offline.
Oh my gosh, They must have been panicking.
Yeah, the shit was truly about to hit the fan.
Everything from like nukes to a tsunami must have been going through their minds.
Right, and he's under the influence of alcohol. Otherwise, he would have panicked.
Oh, so it helped him keep him calm, huh? Yeah. That's why TechSNAP recommends you always drink on the job, everyone. No, we don't. No.
Yeah. So he calls the local taxi service, but because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, there's like nobody can help you for at least 90 minutes.
Right.
So then he has to go upstairs and wake up his cranky girlfriend. and get her to drive him into work.
Oh my gosh,
He's
that's
still
the worst.
drunk.
Oh my gosh. So he's trying to get through all this while being intoxicated.
Yeah. So he arrives at the site and starts organizing calls to sort out a plan for handling the problem. With U.S. and Canada sites being offline, they have to activate their giant contingency plan to have other geographic areas cover the support calls and so on.
So since they're online, their area becomes even more critical than it was before.
Yeah. So within the hour, he's established that the 3 American sites are running off their diesels now, but the Canadian site didn't manage to successfully switch over to backup power.
Too much snow.
Yeah. Well, it was August.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, snow. Bad snow.
But it was the Toronto site was primarily a call-taking center for Canada, and that meant that he had to arrange extra staff at their end to answer the phone. So that means, canceling all non-native language support and doing English only, and
which they probably weren't so great at. I mean, have you heard Irish talk? It's pretty thick.
Yes.
You'll kill me for that.
And assess workload, incoming versus emergency capacity, and so on. And that means also calling in all the other people that were at the party who weren't on call, and canceling people's vacations and so on and so on.
Man.
So he calls up the Toronto Center personally to speak with his counterpart there and to find out what's going on and why they're not on backup power.
Yeah.
So each site typically has a diesel generator and their disaster recovery plans for just such an eventuality.
Sure.
So the Toronto site manager was able to explain that the diesel generator simply had not kicked in, and they were trying to investigate as to why.
Oh, okay. So maybe like some sort of malfunction, like hose broke or something.
So Irish says, call me every 15 minutes and keep me updated.
Yeah. I picture like a 24 scene, like Jack Bauer, call me every 24 minutes. Then, it seems pretty intense.
So the first call exposed that the primary reason the backup generator hadn't started is that nobody had thought to put any diesel in it.
Oh my God. No. Yeah. That's the worst.
Yeah.
I've had that happen at a place I worked at. It is the worst.
I have a point about this, and I'll get to it in a little bit.
Because in my case, you're supposed to test them every few weeks or something like that.
This is my point. It's like, at my ISP, where at our data center, they have once a month they test the diesel generators, which involves servers go into the UPS batteries.
Yeah.
They kick up the generators, make sure they work, then switch load over and switch it back with the UPS in case something goes wrong. And because I remember early on when we a couple months after we moved in, what happened was the muffler on one of the generators exploded during one of those tests.
Ooh.
So good thing it was doing a test and not when it was needed.
Seriously.
But they always have N+1 generators, so it wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
But because they had to take that one offline and use the N+1, that meant they no longer had N+1.
Right.
So they went at considerable expense, had like a giant truck-mounted 1 megawatt generator emergency rush to the site just in case so that they can maintain their N+1. Oh
my God.
But anyway.
So what did they do? Did they get diesel?
So back to Irish. So Irish says, arrange for an emergency supply to be procured, which is probably not easy during a giant blackout.
No.
And call me back every 15 minutes when you have an update. Of course, after 15 minutes, there was no call. But after 30 minutes, he did get a call. The Toronto site manager explained that the supply was en route and it would be there in less than an hour.
Oh, that's not so bad. Okay, all right.
So it's 5:30 in the morning now, and you're like, he's like, I'm sobering up fast.
Right, yeah.
So he agreed to say, all right, you don't have to call me every 15 minutes. Call me back in an hour and let me know what's up. Wow. So we get things back online.
So now I can focus on something else for a few minutes.
So Irish had to assume that the diesel wouldn't be able to be gotten because, this is a giant blackout and whatever, right?
Yeah, that's probably a pretty safe bet.
So it meant he had to arrange for more staff to take more calls and, keeping his people that are already there from leaving. And there's nothing like trying to get people that are done their shift and want to go home and telling them they have to stay.
Right. Especially for some American blackout or whatever.
Yeah, and calling people off their vacations and staffing for an apocalypse.
Oh man, he must have been just hated around the office that evening.
Yeah. But preparations on his end were going pretty well. Anyway, then it came time to call Toronto again, but he calls after an hour, nobody answers. He waits 15 minutes, calls again, still no answer. And after about 45 more minutes, he finally managed to get the site manager from Toronto on the line. And now he has the conversation that took place back and forth. Do you want to read one of the parts?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, I started to read ahead a little bit. I was cheating. I'm sorry.
Okay. So Irish says, okay, what the hell have you been doing for the last 45 minutes?
Right.
And the guy from Toronto was like, I'm at the compound with the diesel truck.
Okay, that sounds good.
That doesn't exactly answer my question. Are you guys up and running now or what?
Yeah.
And Toronto guy's like, no. The truck guy says that it'll take an hour to fill the generator and that the generator can't be on while he's doing it.
Okay, all right.
That is actually a common problem.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why you need N+1 generators.
Yeah.
So that you can have two tanks and
it takes forever to fill it up, especially when it's a big tank.
Yes. And so, because you need to be able to keep constant power. And that's why one diesel generator is not enough.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going to have to run for days or something, you definitely need N+1 or more. And, you need a contract that says, the fuel company has to bring the fuel automatically when there's a blackout and things like that.
Right.
So Irish says, okay, that's good news. So in an hour or so, you guys will be powered up and my staff can go home. It's like, excellent. I'll inform the executives. And Toronto is like, I wouldn't do that just yet.
Uh-oh.
Irish says, why not?
Oh, no.
There's another problem.
Oh, no.
So Irish says, you have my undivided attention.
Yeah, I bet.
And Toronto says, we can't actually get to the backup generator to fill it with diesel.
What?
And Irish says, I think that warrants further explanation.
Yeah.
And so Toronto says, the gate to the compound that surrounds the generator? Well, it's an electrically powered gate.
What? No. So it's locked closed because there's no power?
Yeah, well, it's one of those big heavy gates, and you need motors to move it, right? And it's locked closed electrically.
Jesus.
So,
I mean, the gate around the generator is electrically powered. How did nobody think of that? Seriously, I would ram that thing.
Has diesel generator and put it behind an electric fence.
Ramming speed!
First time I read that, I thought he said electrified. And so like, zzz, but no, that's not. It's like, oh, that makes sense now. So there you have it. IG Support covering high-level disaster recovery plans, but make sure someone with a little bit of common sense goes over it and looks for things like that.
Pay attention to the details. The details are what matter.
Well, because I'm sure in their plan, it didn't say that diesel generator will be surrounded with a fence that has an electric gate.
Yeah. I mean, a good place to start would be, can we always get to the diesel generator? And then work out from there. Just kind of go.
It's like, you need security around the diesel generator so it doesn't get vandalized and sabotaged.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to be able to get to it when you need to get to it.
Yeah.
And, it needs to always have fuel. You don't ever want to be not having fuel, right? And, you need to test it like once a month or once a quarter and make sure that it starts, right? Because it just needs to be started, and you need to it's not good to leave diesel or gasoline just sitting there for a long time. You need to, shake it up a little bit. But yeah, so it's good to test the generator. Just like any disaster recovery plan, you have a plan that calls for backing up your files, right? You got to do test restores like once a quarter and make sure you can actually restore from those backups.
True.
Nothing worse than assuming you have a backup and finding out you don't. Yeah. That this whole time it's been backing up 0-byte files or something.
I agree. Well said, sir. Well said.
And Iris's final advice is that never, ever get drunk when you're on call.
Yeah, and that's probably words for all of us to live by. If you want to send in your war story, we'd love to read it. TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com. Thanks to Irish for sending that in. Alan, even with my horribly plugged nose, I can still smell the roundup. And it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. That's what that music means. You know you love it. And in this part of the show, we generally conclude the stories that didn't quite fit at the top of the show. Ones we're not going to go quite as much in depth. It is the Roundup. We keep moving. And they're often supplied, almost exclusively, although not always, by the TechSNAP subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv, which is an awesome Reddit community. So we invite you to join there. Alan, the first story in the Roundup goes to you, sir, and it's from Bell. Tell me about this guy.
Bell Canada, which is our big telephone company and a large DSL ISP.
Yeah.
Also, because of the way the system works in Canada, they're forced to sell internet wholesale to smaller ISPs that then sell customers DSL.
Yeah, kind of like a few are here, like Verizon.
Yeah, and they've been doing internet traffic shaping. Things like your torrent is limited to 32 kilobytes per second between the hours of 4 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Yes.
And the worst part, though, is when they introduced that, it was fine. But when they enforced that on all the resellers under them is when it became a big issue.
Yeah, I bet.
But in March of 2012, so 4 months from now, they're going to cease all traffic shaping.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Well, part of it is because they've introduced usage-based billing, which is, bandwidth caps.
Oh, okay. So they want you to maybe blow through that data a little faster.
Exactly. But now that because the competition means the bandwidth caps are more reasonable than they used to be, they're not like 40 gigs or like 100 or 200 gigs.
You just don't get to join the telco club unless you join the I promise to be evil checkbox on the application form? I mean, what the hell is it with these people?
Yep. The only not evil ISP left was my local cable company, and they got bought out by one of the big national companies.
Oh, sad face.
Yes, very sad face.
All right. Should I move on to the next story in the Roundup?
I think so.
All right, the next one comes out of the Australian Transport Safety Board, and they're warning us about a software bug that caused a Qantas Airbus A330 to nosedive. Yeah, that's an airplane, an Airbus 330. Kind of scary here. It said that they actually injured 12 people, and 39 people were taken to the hospital. The event happened 3 years ago, actually, too, so this isn't anything too recent.
Now, the bug's been fixed since then.
Yeah, in 2009 they released an update, yeah.
Yeah, but basically they found that a computer software bug was actually at fault for causing the plane to randomly nosedive and injure a bunch of people. I think it happened on more than one occasion, actually.
Oh, wow.
But basically what happened was when data from sensors was invalid or off the charts or whatever, it caused the plane to take random actions. Instead of actually validating that, this sensor should only ever have a value between X and Y, it's like, oh, massive negative value, nosedive.
Wow.
It just seems like
who writes such an oversight.
Yes. It's like, who writes this stuff?
Exactly. All right. Well, the next story in the Roundup goes to you, sir. It's Spanish court rules in favor of peer-to-peer engineer. Yeah,
so basically, a Spanish judge has ruled that peer-to-peer technology is neutral.
Yes.
Right? Just the fact that it's peer-to-peer doesn't make it infringing anybody's copyright.
Amen, brother.
And so the creator cannot be held responsible for what it's used for. So guy programmed a bunch of P2P software. Music companies and video companies tried to sue him. Court says all he did was invent some technology. He didn't steal any movies.
Yeah.
It's, you can't blame him.
Amen. Good. I love it when the courts actually grasp the technology and make the right decision. So
it's like, awesome. Wow, we need more stories like this and less stories like the next one.
Yeah.
No, the next one's good, but
yeah, the next one is good. So the next one on the Roundup is interesting for you SOPA followers. Now, last week, when we were recording this episode, they were still in the SOPA markup hearing. That actually, at this point, has been postponed until some point in 2012. So SOPA's not yet gone to the floor for vote. That hasn't stopped the development community, though. There's already a Firefox plugin in the works, an add-on that lets you bypass SOPA DNS blocking. So what it does is it detects when something's been blocked by SOPA, and then just goes and queries for that same thing on a foreign DNS server.
Yep.
And is it true that the Pirate Bay has their own DNS now too?
I imagine so.
Pirate Bay DNS. It was like an awesome DNS. It was like 1.3.3.7 or something, like leaked.
Oh.
But
that's as easy to remember as Google 8.8.8.8.
Yeah, that's I know. I heard it once and I remembered it. It stuck. I know. So I was gonna look into that because that would be another way to go with some of this stuff. Now we'll see where SOPA goes. I've been considering doing like an in-depth look on SOPA, and the other thing that people need to keep their eye on is the Protect IP Act, because that's coming up.
It's the same version, or a slightly different.
It's a slightly different version, and it's coming up at the end of January. And Although
Also, in the chat room, somebody just linked a whitehouse.gov petition for...
yeah, don't get me started on those whitehouse.gov petitions. They do
They're
absolutely
silly.
nothing, and all the White House does is respond with condescending responses. They've been such a failure. It was a promise
it's
Obama
an
made
internet
on his...
petition. Has anyone ever paid that much attention to an internet petition?
Well, the only reason people got excited is because Obama kind of made it a campaign promise that this would be something that his administration would use. But go look at what's up there, and go look at what's been done. Absolutely nothing. They're an embarrassment for the U.S. I know. I mean, I hate to disparage on people. I wish there was something more we could do as the people. Although I think they're listening. I mean, the fact that they postponed SOPA seems like a good indication. So I think the message is getting through to the lawmakers. So I'm happy.
But the only thing that seems to get through to them is dollars, and that's too bad for us.
Yeah. In fact, you know what? I forgot to include it in the roundup, but I had a link that showed that the entertainment industry has donated 5 times higher amounts of money than the people that are opposed to SOPA, just because they have such deeper pockets. I mean, the financing is so skewed in the other direction. So what are you gonna do, dude? Hopefully, the people's voice will be heard, but we'll see. We'll see. And then you know what? Even if they do pass it, we're already starting to work on things to work around it. So
yeah,
there you go.
But we shouldn't have to.
You're right. And you know, it's all in the name of piracy and preventing stealing online. And that's why it's great when you see these hypocritical stories like the last one we have in the roundup, where the RIAA themselves was busted for using BitTorrent, for downloading TV shows and things like that. And this is another story coming from Torrent Freak. And Alan, did you know that there's like a site you can go to plug in your IP address and then find out if you've downloaded anything?
Yes. It obviously doesn't work very well.
You have downloaded. Oh. Oh, really? Oh, it's like that, huh? It's like that. I see.
Well, and also it didn't detect the Linux Action Show torrents.
Oh, that's true.
And those were all on the wide open public trackers.
That's true.
So if it even tried to detect that kind of stuff, it should detect that I seeded all the Linux Action Show torrents.
You know, that's a really good point. I downloaded an S-ton of Linux ISOs over torrent, and it didn't show me as downloading anything either. Now, I don't download movies or TV shows over torrents.
Right.
But so I was I just thought that's why I was in the clear.
Yeah.
So
it's very limited in what it actually looks at, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. All right.
But basically, the RIAA is claiming someone else used their IP address. Of course, when other people claim that when the RIAA is suing them, not an acceptable excuse.
Right.
It's your IP address.
Right. The RIAA has had a pretty limp-wristed response to this. It's pretty funny. They blamed a contractor.
It's like hypocritical.
The RIAA blamed a contractor. Can you believe that? They say, "Oh, it wasn't us." I mean, well, you see, we let these contractors in, and they got on our internet, and they just started downloading stuff, and we didn't endorse it. It's not good. It's like, come on, you guys, are you serious? Nobody believes that. Alan, I think we've approached the end of this episode of TechSNAP.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. Well, just a few points of business. TechSNAP is live, except for next week. We're live on Thursdays. Next week, we're live on Wednesday at 1 p.m. at jblive.tv, 1 p.m. Pacific, which is what time? East Coast?
4 p.m. Eastern.
Boom, 4 p.m. And we're also streaming over at jblive.am if you want to catch the audio version of the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And also, be sure to check the show notes. Go grab an RSS feed and get the show weekly when it comes out. That way, next week, when you're all busy with the holiday stuff, you don't even have to worry about going to check the website. You just open your favorite RSS client. Boom. Bob's your uncle.
There it is.
It's like magic delivered through the internet. It's fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you right back here next week.